The rope fell away like a dead snake, its last fibers snapping under the cowboy's knife. Dawn's first light spilled across the desert, catching the shock in the Apache woman's eyes. She stood tall, towering over him, unsteady yet proud. He didn't flinch. "You're free now," he whispered calmly. For a long moment she simply breathed, as if relearning how air felt without restraint. Freedom had a weight to it, heavier than the rope ever was. She studied the cowboy's face, sun-beaten skin, steady eyes, no greed, no mockery. Only sincerity. That alone unsettled her in ways chains never had. She had expected cruelty from a white man, not mercy. Expected conditions, not silence. Her wrists burned where the rope had rubbed her skin raw, but she ignored the pain. What mattered was understanding why he dared to release her. No man freed an enemy without reason. The cowboy didn't offer explanations. He simply stepped back, giving her space, showing her he meant no harm. The desert wind tugged at his hat brim, carrying the smell of mesquite and distant rain. But beneath it was something else, a faint rumble, soft at first. Disguised by the morning breeze, her expression sharpened instantly. She knew that sound better than any man who lived on this side of the territory line. Hoofbeats, many, moving fast. The ground trembled ever so slightly beneath her bare feet. Her father's warriors were coming, and they were close enough to smell blood already. He didn't sense the danger at first. He only saw her posture shift from relief to alarm. Her chin lifted, shoulders squared, eyes narrowing toward the distant ridge. He followed her gaze, but saw nothing yet, only the endless amber desert stretching toward the horizon. He didn't question her. She spoke quietly, voice low and edged with urgency. "My father's riders." The cowboy stiffened, his fingers instinctively curling near the handle of his revolver, though he didn't draw it. She shook her head. "If they see you with me, they will kill you before the sun fully rises." She wasn't exaggerating. She towered above him, but in that moment her presence felt even larger, not threatening but heavy with warning. The cowboy's heartbeat ticked louder in his ears. He had known freeing her was a risk, but the thought of facing an entire Apache war band hadn't crossed his mind. Until now, still, he didn't regret cutting the rope. Something about the way she held herself, dignified even in captivity, had made the decision for him. He couldn't let her die bound like an animal. So he swallowed the fear rising in his throat. "Then we'd better move," he said quietly, but she didn't move. She turned to him instead, eyes fierce. "You must run, alone. They will track my steps first. I can lead them away." It was meant as a command, not an offer. Yet he only shook his head with stubborn defiance. Running wasn't something he did well. "No," he said, voice steady. "I got you into this by cutting that rope. I won't leave you to face their anger alone." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't puff his chest. But the quiet conviction landed heavily between them. She hadn't expected resistance, especially not to protect her, her jaw clenched. Loyalty was logical among her own people. But between an Apache woman and a white rancher? It made no sense. She stepped closer, towering over him, trying to intimidate him into survival. "If you stay, they will spill your blood across the sand. My father does not forgive." The cowboy swallowed hard, but didn't retreat. He was afraid. She could see it, smell it, but courage wasn't absence of fear. It was the ability to stand anyway. She recognized that kind of bravery. It was the kind her own warriors were raised to respect. Against her will, she admired him. The hoofbeats grew louder, no longer masked by the wind. Dust rose over the far ridge like a faint, growing cloud. Time had run out. She turned again to the horizon, her face tightening with conflicted emotion. She knew her people's laws. They were unwavering. They wouldn't listen to explanations. He followed her stare, finally catching movement, dark silhouettes cresting the ridge, growing larger with every second. 10 riders, maybe more. Spears catching the early morning light. War paint glinting. They were coming fast. His breath tightened. A single cowboy against a war party was suicide. But still he didn't move. She looked back at him, frustration flickering in her eyes. "Why do you stay?" she asked sharply. "Why risk your life for me?" He swallowed hard, searching for words he rarely used. Because someone had to do the right thing, he said. And you didn't deserve to be tied up like that. The simplicity of his reasoning struck her harder than any weapon. No agenda, no reward. Just moral clarity. It wasn't something she expected from any outsider. For a moment she simply stared at him, caught between two worlds, the one she belonged to, and the one this man represented. Her father's riders thundered closer. The earth vibrated beneath them. She knew their fury would be absolute. To them, she was a daughter dishonored, found beside a white man who had touched her bonds, touched her fate. They would see betrayal in every piece of this moment. Regardless of truth, the cowboy straightened, knowing his weapon wouldn't save him. His revolver held 6 bullets. There were 15 riders. Maybe more. He would die in seconds. Yet he didn't step away from her. If anything, he shifted slightly in front of her, as though ready to shield her from her own people. Something inside her cracked, something fierce, ancient, instinctive. Perhaps loyalty. Perhaps something more. She placed her large hand on his shoulder, grounding him. "If they attack," she said, "stand behind me. Do not draw your gun. It will only make them kill you faster." He nodded once, trusting her completely. The riders were almost upon them now, hooves striking the ground like thunder. War cries split the morning air, sharp and echoing off the canyon walls. She stepped forward, lifting her chin, signaling that she was alive, unbroken, unafraid. Her silhouette rose high and commanding. A warrior's daughter reclaiming authority. The cowboy stood behind her, heart hammering, dust swirling around his boots. He watched the warriors charge closer, watched the woman he had freed transform into something formidable and proud. He didn't know if she could protect him. He didn't know if this moment would be his last. But he stayed, and as the first riders closed in, spears raised, eyes burning, she lifted her hand in a powerful gesture, signaling them to stop. Whether they would obey, whether her father's wrath could be calmed, remained unknown. But the cowboy understood one thing with absolute clarity. Cutting that rope had changed everything. Apache warriors closed in like a tightening noose, their horses snorting clouds of steam into the cold dawn. Arrows were notched, bowstrings pulled back, ready to release death at the slightest provocation. The cowboy inhaled sharply, but the towering woman stepped in front of him. Her silhouette fierce against the rising sun, she raised both hands, palms outward, her voice echoing through the desert. "He saved me," she shouted. Her father's warriors slowed, horses stamping nervously. Dust swirled around their hooves. The war chief, her father, pushed through the circle, his face carved from stone, his eyes burning with suspicion and fury. Her father's gaze traveled from the cowboy's boots to his eyes, reading him like a hostile map. "A white man cut your rope?" he asked coldly. She nodded once. The chief's jaw tightened. To him this meant trespass, interference, possible deceit. Kindness was rare. Traps were common. His people had learned that painfully. The cowboy stood still, forcing himself not to reach for his gun. He knew the movement alone would get him killed. Instead, he kept his hands at his sides, fingers open, showing he meant no harm. His heart hammered, but he kept his eyes honest. The war chief respected courage. She had warned him of that. The chief lifted a hand, and the warriors lowered their bows an inch, but no more. "If you speak truth," he growled, "the spirits will know. And if you lie, they will drag your soul through the dust." The cowboy swallowed hard, but nodded. He understood that this was not negotiation. This was judgment. She stepped closer to her father, towering even over him. "He cut the rope because he believed I did not deserve to die bound," she said. "He did not touch me. He did not ask for anything. He only acted with honor." Her voice cracked with emotion, but her stance stayed firm. The chief's stare softened by a fraction, but distrust still coiled inside it like a snake. He walked to the cowboy, inspecting him with a warrior's precision. "Why?" he demanded. "Why risk death for a woman who is not your own?" The cowboy exhaled slowly, the desert air rough in his lungs. "Because no one deserved to be left like that," he answered. and I don't stand by when I see wrong being done." His voice was steady but quiet. The chief noticed the lack of arrogance rare in white men he had encountered. The cowboy's humility carried weight. Even in this dangerous moment, for a long silence, no one moved. The warriors watched their chief. The chief watched the cowboy. And the Apache woman watched both, her heart twisted in fear and hope. Then the chief spoke, "If you claim honor, then prove your spirit is strong enough to survive among us this day." The cowboy's brow furrowed. "What must I do?" he asked. The chief pointed toward the canyon where the sun now burned red along the cliffs. "Walk with me," he said. "If you are a liar, you will not return." It wasn't a threat, it was a fact. The Apache woman's breath caught sharply. She reached for her father's arm. "Do not harm him," she pleaded. The chief raised a hand, silencing her. "If he is what you claim, he will survive. If not, the spirits will decide." He turned his horse and rode toward the canyon, expecting the cowboy to follow on foot. The test had begun. The cowboy hesitated only a moment before stepping forward. She touched his wrist gently, her strength a comfort rather than force. "Do not show fear," she whispered. "The canyon watches. My father watches. Your own heart watches." Her voice held something new, respect, maybe admiration. It made him stand taller. He followed the chief's horse into the canyon shadow, where the red stone walls rose like ancient guardians. The chief dismounted, leading the cowboy deeper into the narrow pass. "This land knows truth," the chief said. "It reveals the coward, the liar, and the honorable." The cowboy stayed silent, unsure what was expected. They walked until the canyon opened into a wide basin painted gold by the sun. The chief halted. "Here," he said. "A test of spirit." He pointed to a cluster of jagged rocks and a narrow ridge above them. "Climb, sit, face the wind. If you are weak, you will fall." The cowboy stared at the ridge, steep, narrow, dangerous. The test was not just physical. It was symbolic. A man without a steady heart would lose balance. A man without truth would lose courage. He swallowed his fear, removed his hat, and began the climb. The chief watched without expression. Loose stones shifted under his boots. Dust choked the air. Several times he slipped, catching himself with scraped palms. But he kept going, pushing through the trembling in his legs. When he reached the ridge, he lowered himself slowly, sitting upright, letting the brutal wind slap against his face. Below, the chief waited. Minutes passed. Then more. The cowboy remained steady, eyes forward, breath slow. He refused to look down, refused to doubt himself. The chief finally nodded. "Come down," he commanded. The cowboy made the descent carefully, muscles burning, heart pounding with relief. When he reached the basin floor, the chief approached him. For the first time, there was something soft to respect. "Your spirit is steady," he said. "You fear death, but you do not run from it. You protect without gain. This is honor." The cowboy bowed his head slightly, breath still ragged from the climb. The chief led him back to the warriors. When the Apache woman saw him alive, her relief was palpable. Her shoulders dropped. Her breath trembled. She stepped toward him as her father raised his hand. "He lives," the chief declared. "He is not our enemy today." The warriors lowered their weapons fully. The woman looked at the cowboy, her dark eyes shining with gratitude and something deeper. "You proved yourself," she said quietly. He met her gaze, feeling a connection neither of them had expected. The rising sun warmed their faces as silence settled between them, peaceful, not tense. The chief turned to his daughter. "If he is under your protection," he said, "then he will not be harmed by our people." His voice was firm but accepting. She nodded, stepping beside the cowboy. Her towering frame now a shield of trust instead of doubt. The cowboy exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. She placed a hand on his shoulder, gentle, steady. "You saved me," she said softly. "And now, we've saved each other." The warriors turned their horses toward home, leaving the two of them standing side by side beneath the brightening sky. There, in the calm after danger, the bond forged between them was no longer accidental. It was destiny shaped by courage, risk, and the simple act of cutting a rope that changed both their lives forever.